All right, let's finish up our stories that we have about why are you learning all this? Why does this hemoglobin structure matter? It actually matters for four aspects, medical applications that we've already talked about. High altitude sickness comes from the fact that hemoglobin works better when you add the BPG molecule for the low altitude versus high altitude difference in partial pressures. Now let's talk about something that's a little bit odd. Methemoglobinemia. It's what happens when iron is locked into its blue color rather than its red color. And you actually can associate this a little bit with the difference between venous and arterial blood. There's a few other things going on, but when you have more iron plus 3 in the heme context, you are going to get more of a blue color. It will absorb different wavelengths of light. This is actually very helpful for experiments, but it results in the fact that you can have conditions where your hemoglobin is itself miscolored. The word methemoglobin means the iron 3 version of it. It means the oxidized version. Remember that if you want to shift it to the red color, it needs to be reduced. There is a protein that does this called cytochrome B5 that actually will take electrons from our electron box in ADH, and it will pass them on to the iron, to the protein essentially, the heme group in the iron, and it's going to basically pass those electrons on. When the iron loses electrons, it puts them back. Now, because you have an oxidizing environment in some cases, you'll have the iron tending to go up to +3, but then it does not work as well. Remember, the iron +3 is irreversibly bound to oxygen, and that means the whole point of hemoglobin is messed up. And so, what do you do to fix this? You add methylene blue. So, notice it's kind of weird. If somebody has blue hemoglobin, you add a blue molecule to get rid of the blue. But the reason is it's not about the color. These are different molecules. It's about the electrons. The blue molecule is actually able to, it's a reducing agent, which will actually it's turned by the body into its forms. I think technically it's turned by the body. NADPH gives its electrons to the methylene blue, and then the methylene blue will turn it back again to the hemoglobin. That's what this kind of figure means. What I like about this figure is it also connects things to Biochem 2 topics, which are going to be what's going on with glucose, pyruvate, phosphoglucose. You'll talk about all of that next quarter. For right now, we're focused on the hemoglobin. And so this is one of those cases where usually you don't have cases that are this extreme, and actually a lot of times you will see this occurring in newborns. It's one of the reasons why newborns can be blue if their iron isn't in the right oxidation state. So methemoglobinemia can occur in adults. It actually can be hereditary if you have a problem, especially with the reductase that keeps your iron red. And so it's called, it can show up at both ends of life. And there are even people that can get by. They have an extreme case where they get a lot of it in their skin. And this is not an AI picture. This is an actual NBC News. This was from 2008. They couldn't do AI that well then. And this is what it can look like, and this is a more middle of the road case. There's definitely a blue tinge to these people's skin. So the interesting thing about this also is you want to know what's going on, because sometimes the figures can be confusing. Oxidative stress is what they're showing, but then they show like electrons moving the other way, and this doesn't quite do it for me. This doesn't quite show what's going on. But if you understand what's going on, then it doesn't really matter what the authors have shown for the arrows. The other thing I like about this is it shows you a hemoglobin binding curve. And notice that the hemoglobin, when you have the blue hemoglobin, where is the curve shifted? It's actually shifted up, because iron 3 has a higher affinity for O2 than iron 2 does. If you have a population of molecules with more iron 3, the overall oxygen binding of that population will be shifted up. And that's, I just want to point out, methylene blue is one of those sort of funny things about medicine. It turns out that the blue molecule is basically able to carry the electrons around and is able to replace the reducing power of the cytochrome if you don't have that, or if you have some other problem that results in your hemoglobin being produced. It's all about electrons, and so you can apply electrons in a way that they get passed to the right place. Because it's in the blood, I think that helps too, because you just put this in the blood and the problem is right there in the blood, and so a blood-borne drug can actually deal with that. So that is our first medical story.